So I'm back again to do the other deck from the Magic the Gathering Arena starter deck. So if you saw my other video, it was a black-green deck, and this one looks to be a um, blue-red deck, and um, it has a foil um, foil rare. It's a 7/7 giant wizard creature that costs 5 and 2 islands. When Cyclone Summoner enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, return all permanents to their owner's hand except for giants, wizards, and lands. So it's one of those ways to um, force people to um, obviously put stuff back into the hand. That's a whole, like, that's what the card says. To then have to force them to discard cards down to their 7 card maximum unless they have a card saying, you have no maximum hand size. So, you could play that, pass turn to your um, opponent. If your opponent already had like 5 to 7 cards and then had to pick up 5 or 10 cards from the battlefield, crap, I only have, you know, 5 land. How do I play, the 10 or 15 cards? Well, I'm only going to be able to play a handful and then discard. Like, it's one of those kind of cards that you're just trying to remove stuff from the battlefield to give you some board advantage while getting your opponent to try to get rid of stuff, in this case by trying to force them to discard some cards. So the next card is Mind Flayer. Costs 3 and 2 islands. It's a 3/3 horror creature. Dominant monster. When Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. Arnie Broken Bro. It's a 3/3 human berserker. Has haste, boast. You pay 1, and where it's just the number 1, it could be 1 of any color. You may change Arnie Broken Brow's base power to 1, plus the greatest power among other creatures you control until end of turn. Activate this ability only if your creatures attack this turn and only once each turn. Calamity Bearer. It's a 3/4 giant berserker that costs 2 and 2 mounds. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that much damage to that permanent or player instead. So obviously, giants in the creature type, so where it specifies, if a giant would do damage, this guy's a 3/4. If it would do damage to an opponent's creature or to your opponent because they're a player, that 3 damage would double to 6. So potentially fun mechanic um, for, you know, like it's an okay creature at, you know, the mana cost, and then, you know, oh hey, we're gonna give it this bonus to go from like, you know, an like average card to like a slightly above average for, you know, the mana cost. It's not like amazing, but you know, it's decent. The next one is Archmage Emeritus. It's a 2/2 human wizard for 2 and 2 islands. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. Obviously, blue and red kind of revolve around instants and sorceries. Obviously, they do have creatures too, but you know, some decks in those colors, you know, kind of lean on instants and sorceries where, you know, green almost feels like it leans more heavily on creatures. So if you have green or a green white deck, you know, you might see more creatures in that than you would in blue or red sometimes. Vortex Runner. It's a 2/3 human wizard for 2 and an island. As long as you control 8 or more lands, Vortex Runner gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. So it's kind of like the squirrel type creature from the black green deck, where it's a cheap creature, you know, you can get out early, and if it's still on the battlefield mid to late game when you have more lands, or if, you know, you draw it later in the game when you have more lands, it's, oh hey, it gets, you know, slightly better because there's 8 lands. You know, it only gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked, but, you know, going from 2 to 3 damage and dealing it directly to, you know, the player as opposed to potentially getting blocked and destroyed, you know, that 3 damage can, you know, potentially start making an impact, depending on, you know, what your opponent has. There's 2 copies of this card. Frost Trickster. It's a 2/2 bird wizard for 2 and a island, where it's a bird, has flying. When Frost Trickster enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap stage. So kind of one of those blue control-y type things, trying to be like, oh, I'm adding to my battlefield, but I don't want to deal with that on your side. Let's tap that. And there are 4 copies of that in this deck. Field Research. It's a sorcery for 2 and an island, and it has a kicker of an additional 2 and an island. I mentioned in the last video, but a kicker is an additional cost in addition to the normal casting cost. So 2 and islands, the normal casting cost, with the kicker, which is also 2 and an island, it makes the kicked cost combined with the normal cost would be 4 and 2 islands. The card says draw 2 cards if the spell was kicked, draw 3 cards instead, so you're essentially paying twice as much to get a third card. Um, Luckily, it doesn't have that downside of having to discard a card. Some cards are, 2 to 4 mana to draw 3, but then, you might have to discard a card or discard 2. So it's kind of one of those trade offs. Hey, I'll pay 6 to draw 3 cards. I don't have to discard anything. Um, Take it how you will. 2 copies of that. Wormhole Serpent. It's a 3/5 serpent for 4 on an island. You can pay 3 in an island. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. So that's sort of fun if you end up having, something that you want to ding your opponent with, do some more damage to them and not get blocked. Let's say they have 10 creatures and you only have 8, they're going to be able to block all your creatures, but then you say, hey, let me pay this mana cost, one of my guys, can't be blocked, even though you have enough blockers. At least one of my guys is going to deal damage to you. Magic has an interesting way of, allowing different things like that to kind of change the course of the game. So 2 copies of that. Now we're back to some red cards. Rebuke, Ambusher. It's a 1/3 Goblin Warrior for 1 in a mountain. You can pay 2 in a mountain. Rebuke, Ambusher gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Whereas the 1/3, that's one of those kind of added perks of I don't have anything in hand to play. Let me make this guy stronger, when I go to attack. Looks like there's 4 copies of this in this deck, which, sometimes the cheap common or uncommons, they might give you more of like 3 or 4, and then some of the more costly cards, that are, maybe a uncommon or a rare, say like 5 to 7, they give you like 1. Every once in a while they might give you 2 of those cards that are like 5 to 7 mana. Just trying to balance out your ability to play different cards, because obviously if a deck's 60 cards and you have 4 or something, that's a 4, and 4 out of 60 of those cards are that one particular card, increasing your chance of drawing that. But then if it costs 7 and you have 2 of them in your first hand or your starting hand, well, those 7 drops aren't going to be helpful. So depending on the starting hand, you might mulligan. Try just Magic is sometimes about finding balance when you're building the deck. The next card, Agsgar Cavalry. It's a 2/2 Dwarf Berserker for 1 in a mountain, and you can tap it. Target creature gains haste until end of turn. Kind of a trade-off, having to tap one of your creatures to give another creature haste, but if you or maybe putting something that's bigger than a 2/2 on the battlefield and you want to attack with it, you can be like, well, I can deal with not attacking with my 2/2. I'm going to tap it so I can let this 7/7 over here attack for 7 instead of just trying to attack for 2. Like, sometimes there's the trade-offs. 4 copies of those. Run Amak. It's an instant for 1 and a mountain. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. And another card that there's 4 of. It only targets 1 creature, but +3/+3 and trample for that 2 mana, the 1 and a man. That's a pretty decent value of what it's doing. Next card, Red Dragon. It's a 4/4 dragon for 4 and 2 mountains. And obviously, where it's a dragon, it has flying. There might be some non-flying dragons, but everyone that I can think of usually has flying, or at least the creatures. First Breath. When Red Dragon enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. Nice perk of having a decent sized creature, and then hey, let's add this trigger on it when it enters the battlefield. It's going to deal damage to the opponent also. This is one of the few higher cost cards, but does happen to have 3 copies, even though it's 4 and 2 mountains. I guess they decided when building the deck that was, worth the high cost. Thunder Rebuke. It's sorcery for 1 and a mountain. Thunder Rebuke deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So you can't directly attack your opponent, like their life total, but you can attack a creature or a planeswalker, which planeswalker is technically a permanent but also a player. Some cards are interesting in the way they word things, where it's like, in this case, you can target planeswalker. Some cards specifically say a player, which a planeswalker would fall under that category. So just one of the things that you constantly have to be looking at, the wording and what is meant by the wording. So there's 3 copies of this, and then it has 4 copies of Evolving Wilds, which, like in the last video where I did with the black-green deck, this isn't a basic land. You can't even tap it for mana. You would sacrifice it to search for a basic land, and then put that basic land into the battlefield tapped. So some players like this card and others similar to it to thin out their decks. If you end up playing this and then going through your deck to pull another card out of it, that's less cards in your library, more chances to top deck what you're looking for, better odds of drawing something you want. and it also gives you the opportunity to, um, you know, mana fix, so to speak, if you end up having uh, 4 islands in one mountain and you have something that costs 2 mountains, you can't, tap an island to count it as a mountain because it specifically says 5. It specifically says 2 mountains. So Evolving Wilds allows you to search out that, one mana, type that you might be needing. And then it goes to the basic mana, and at the back, like in the other deck, it has, card with what you do on your turn, and then the back talks about attacking and blocking. And it also has a card for Arena with a code for me to get these 2 decks on my Magic the Gathering Arena account, the program where I've played the game a few times for my videos. So keep checking back, and I'll have some other Magic videos and maybe some more video video game walkthroughs later in this week and the coming weeks. So hopefully you enjoy this and have a good day.